Okay, this is called to order for the Library Commission meeting of August 16th. This is a teleconference meeting with the Library Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. At this time, I'd like to introduce the staff and Library Commission members who are present in the meeting. First, I'd like to identify Vice Chair Alan Cohen. You can raise your hand, we go. Myself, the Chair, David Earhart. Commissioner Katie Hedrovic. Commissioner Aldora Lee. Commissioner Kristen Lee. And Commissioner Vamsi Velikapudi. I would like to note that Commissioner Sukanya Guha submitted her resignation from the commission, and but we appreciate the support she gave to the commission while she was on it, and wish her the best. For our staff present, we have Sean Reinhardt, Director of Library and Community Services, and I don't know, mispronounce it. Is it Giuliano Costantini, a senior librarian? There we go. And hopefully later, Rose Waldman will be joining us. Sean, would you please provide instructions to the Library Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, I would be happy to. However, the Assistant Director, Nick Jagda, is not here, and he usually runs the webinar. And unfortunately, I don't have a little script that is prepared.
Oh,
however,
okay.
I'm going to wing it unless you have it in front of you, Mr. Chair.
I have the script in front of me here, so I can.
Would you please be so kind?
Happy to. Members of the commission should keep their cameras on and their microphones off until they are recognized by the chair. Commissioners should raise their hand to indicate they wish to speak. If a member of the public wishes to speak during a public comment period, please notify the staff liaison by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in, you can use *9 to engage the raise hand function. Public comment will be heard in the order received and is limited to 3 minutes in length. When your turn for public comment has arrived, staff will unmute you. Any questions? Okay, now we're going to open public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the Library Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the Library Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The Library Commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Library Commission cannot respond to non-agenda items brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Sean, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda?
Folks, anyone who wishes to make a public comment, please indicate so by using the raise hand feature there on your Zoom dashboard. Seeing no hands raised.
Or press *9 on your phone.
Thank you. Or press *9 on your phone. I see no hands raised or other indication of public comment. So with that, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, on to regular business. Under regular business, the Library Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Library Commission approval. The first item under regular business is to approve the minutes from the July 19th, 2021 Library Commission meeting. Any clarifying questions from the commission before taking public comment? Sean, do we have any public comment on this item?
Anyone who wishes to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 on your phone. And there being no one indicating a desire to make a public comment, back to you, Mr. Chair.
At this time, I'd like to open the discussion for any Library Commission comments, clarifications, or concerns about the minutes as presented.
I just moved that we approve the minutes as presented. I didn't see any issues with them.
Thank you, Commissioner Hedrick.
And
Do I
I'd like to second that.
have a second? All right. Sean, can we take a roll call vote on the stated motion, which is to approve the minutes as presented?
Yes, just indicate by saying yes or raising your hand or no, or abstain. Commissioner Lee? Commissioner Lee, how do you vote?
You're muted.
Aldora, you're muted. Aldora, if you vote in favor of approving the minutes, you could just raise your hand or a thumbs up. We are unable to hear you.
You know,
I could not hear what he was saying, so I couldn't respond.
Oh, can you hear me now, Aldora?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. So the question is your vote on the approving the minutes of last month's meeting.
And do you need a second?
It's already been moved by Commissioner Hadrovic, seconded by Commissioner Cohen, and we're just taking a roll call vote. So how do you
Oh.
vote? In favor?
In favor.
Okay. Commissioner Bella Kabuti,
Yes.
Commissioner Leap,
In favor?
Commissioner Cohen, Vice Chair Hadrovic.
actually, Alan is the vice chair,
Oh,
but I.
sorry. Commissioner Hadrovic
But I vote to approve them as well.
and Chair Earhart.
I approve.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you for that. The first item after the agenda approval was the summer reading adventure in collaboration with childcare. We've been asked to delay that, I believe, Sean, and just want to confirm that we are still planning to delay that. Is that correct?
Yes, it's my understanding that the librarian, Ms. Waldman, who'd be delivering the presentation, she was encountering some internet connectivity issues. She's traveling to another location.
Now I can't even hear you, sorry.
Okay, sorry. The librarian who was to make the presentation was having some internet connectivity issues. So she's traveling to another location and she should be at that location within the next 20, 30 minutes or so. So if it's okay with the chair and the commission, that presentation could happen a little bit later in the proceedings.
That's fine with me. We have 2 or 3 other items that we could move on to under the general business still. So regular business. So we will revisit the status of that one at the end of the D4, I believe. So, okay. All right. The next item on the agenda for tonight was reviewing the commission work plan and the report to the city council. The sort of in preparation for this, and we sort of introduced the idea last month when we were updating the calendar for the balance of the year. So sort of to the two things. The work plan itself is an activity that we undertook late part of 2019, early part of 2020 to update the commission work plan to align it with the style and the content of other commissions that are currently supporting Menlo Park. We had reviewed that in July and August of last year with the intention of presenting it to the city council in September of last year as part of our annual report out to the commission. That presentation did not occur, and so that the final sort of ratification by the city council didn't occur. So tonight, what we'd like to do is revisit kind of where we got to with the work plan, and then walk through the draft slide presentation that I've worked on with Commissioner Cohen, Hedrovic, and with staff in preparation for potentially presenting at the September 21st meeting of this year. So anyway,
Excuse me, am I not supposed to be able to see you anymore?
I'm not sure why you can't see me. I
I've
believe that
got Zoom United up here and I don't know why it popped up.
Can everyone else see me? I can see my image in the.
It says
in the,
Zoom United, one unified meeting, and it's got the Zoom logo in the upper left corner.
You know what I
Okay.
might propose, Eldora?
Okay.
Perhaps disconnect and rejoin the meeting, and maybe that will.
Oh,
and maybe
tempting
that-
the fates. Okay, I hear you.
Other
Maybe-
option is that that a different window has gotten clicked. So like maybe if you look at the
Oh, let me try this. This is better. I'm looking at a list of the items. Is that what I should be seeing? D1, D2, D3?
you should see our beautiful faces, except mine.
Oh, too bad.
You're
I'm
going to
not
see you're going to see Hollywood Squares.
it's the gallery right now.
It may make sense to disconnect and reconnect. Why don't you give that
Well,
a try? Just a suggestion.
I'm not sure where on this particular screen I would disconnect. Sorry.
This seems
It
to
should
be our
say-
Zoomed meeting.
You should say
Everything's
it
going
says
wrong.
leave.
One
It says leave in the bottom right corner. If you move the arrow around on the screen, you'll see leave. It's a red box on the right lower corner.
Right low. Well, right lower corner.
Or
I have
if you
only-
can hear us, there's nothing currently up on the screen,
Yeah.
just our faces. So maybe we'll just proceed. How about that?
Yeah,
Oh,
we can
no.
actually see you, Eldora. And so I'm not sure why you can't see us. We can hear you. So I would propose we continue on until it becomes
Okay.
a bigger as far as you're participating. So just know that we can see you. So that just from an
I've
awareness
been waiting to
standpoint.
see you guys all day. How doggone it.
Anyway, all right. So the materials were in the preview material. So at this point, are there clarifying questions or from the commission before we take public comment on the work plan and the draft presentation?
Mr. Chair and Commission, I do have the draft presentation here and can project it on the screen if that's helpful. But it also was included in the agenda packet.
Okay, so is there an interest in going through those slides? I know some of you have already sort of had a chance to digest them.
I personally took a look at them. I thought they were great, and I don't need to see them.
Okay,
And I read through them as well. So
okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's split up the two things. Let's, Sean, if we could call for public comment on the draft presentation, and then we can circle back to the work plan separately, since it's the two things could get confusing as we're going forward here. Do we have any public comment on the draft presentation?
So any member of the public who'd like to make a public comment on item D3, review commission work plan and report to city council, please use the raise hand feature or dial *9. Seeing no public comments, return it to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we don't seem to have anybody outside of the commission or staff on the meeting right now, as far as I can tell from the participants list. So.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's one reason why the interval between calling the question and turning back to you has been a little short.
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing some other list of people. All right, so the second part of it would be I've already asked the commission, but anything as far as the work plan, Could you bring that up, please, Sean, just because there was a clarification to it on item 5. No, not the work plan. So it'd be staff report 24.
I think it was,
LC.
yeah, attachment B, I think.
Yeah.
Give me a moment while I navigate to that. Sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the title of the document has the LCP 2021-024 in it.
Okay, here you go. I just didn't want you to see the actual scrolling take place.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that. So when we finalized the list last year, we came forward with these 9 items. At the time, and I think I mentioned this in the slides, we had updated number 4 to reflect not just COVID, but the broader service expectations for library services relative to things like pandemics or other emergencies. So that was an update we made then. And then almost a year ago tomorrow, we did supplement the number 5 to draw out just to make clear the plan for staff presentations, and then also the expectation for commissioner liaison reports from the library affiliates. So other than that, this is the document that we had agreed on that was going to go in front of the council last September. So I'll pause. Any questions or comments from the commission? And before we would potentially vote to approve the document with the updated item 5, have we had any additional public comment requests, Sean?
There being no other members of the public present, there are no additional requests for comment.
I do notice that Rose Waldman from the library staff has joined the meeting. Thank you, Rose, for your diligence there. Okay, so to close out D3. Would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve the work plan as reviewed and presented this evening?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go right ahead.
quicker to get ahead of that one. I propose to make a motion to approve it.
Thank you. Do I have a second for the stated motion?
Sure. I'm happy to second it, David.
Sean, could you restate the motion, and then we can have a roll call on that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the motion by Commissioner Velapagudi and the second by Vice Chair Cohen is to approve and recommend the Library Commission's work plan to the City Council as represented in Attachment B. So with that, on a roll call vote, I'll just call your name and give your vote. So Commissioner Lee, how do you vote?
I can't find out where you are.
Do you vote? Oh, she's going to pass. Okay. Commissioner Velapagudi.
Yes, I approve.
Okay. Commissioner Leap.
In favor.
Okay. Commissioner Hadrovic.
I vote to approve the motion.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cohen.
Approved.
Approved. And Chair Earhart.
Approved.
Okay, the motion passes with 6 aye votes, 1 abstain.
Thank you. At this time, now that
Just
we have,
five votes in favor, one abstaining, isn't it?
Yeah, let me clarify. Sorry, I'm doing a million things at once, and I'm not as good at this as Mr. Jegda. It's 5 aye votes and 1 abstain, 6 total votes. Thank you, Commissioner Hadrovic.
all right, now that we have the full complement of the city staff, the library staff for item D2, we'll return to that topic now. Is that going to work? Okay. We will now have a presentation on the library's summer reading adventure program and their collaboration with the city's childcare facilities. Librarian Rose Waldman and senior librarian Giuliano Costantini are here to make the presentation.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much all for your patience with my hustle from my home to my workplace. I sincerely appreciate it. These are the days of work from home and internet not always functioning properly. May I please have permission to share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to do that.
Great. Thank you so very much. One moment, please. Go ahead and this 1 second. There. Oh, and we also wanted to turn into a slide. Oh no, stop share. Mistakes were made. Excuse me for one moment. I just want to show you the back end. Oh, come on. Oh, one moment, please. Display settings. There we go. All right. Apologies. I think we're all seeing the correct thing now. This is where, if I were presenting a story time to you, I would say this is the title page. It's where you can find the title of the presentation. This summer, Menlo Park Library provided support to the city-funded child development centers and summer camps through a summer reading initiative featuring an early literacy program called Storytime.
I teach kindergarten, so that sounded very familiar.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. So why am I here talking to you about this? Hello to all of you. My name is Rose Waldman. I'm a librarian at Menlo Park Library. If you need to get in touch with me, this is my email and phone number, just so you know. It'll be at the end of the presentation as well. Following our children's librarian's retirement at the beginning of June, I was deputized as project lead on the Menlo Park Library Summer Reading and the co-lead for the Summer Literacy Initiative. So Rondell Howard, our recreation supervisor, expressed a desire to see summer reading brought to the 2 summer camps and 2 preschools that the city runs. Having a relatively limited amount of time to speak with you today, I'm choosing to focus on this and not so much on the lovely summer reading program that you can still sign up for. It's for all ages and available online through the platform of Beanstack at Menlo Park Library. But what Rondell asked for was to see that summer reading brought into the summer camps and preschools that the city runs. As you can see, I've sort of listed out here what that means. So there are 2 camps, Camp Menlo and Menlo Mania, each of which host 2 age groups for 4 2-week sessions during the summer. There's also 2 preschools, one at the Menlo Children's Center that's divided into 3 classrooms by age group, from the very, very little babies who are 1.5, sort of 1.5 to 2.5, all the way up to kids who are almost ready to start kindergarten. And then also over at the Bellhaven Child Development Center, 4 classrooms of kids not divided by age, but more on that almost ready to start kindergarten end. So prior to the library being closed for the pandemic, we were providing 6 story times per week, and post-pandemic, we have been providing all of our library programming online. So far, we will reopen when it's safe. That said, with this need, we did see the opportunity to help the city's effort to provide support to people who needed assistance with their childcare during this time. And we thought this was an excellent opportunity to step up. So the service that we provided, we established the self or adult guided online summer reading program that I made very brief mention to just a few minutes ago, would not be conducive to the in-class model. It would not be conducive to the needs of specifically the teachers who are dealing with a number of students at a time. Signing a bunch of kids up for this online thing didn't seem like it was going to serve their needs. So we designed a program that would bring library staff into the classrooms. This included paper reading logs for the kids to be able to track their reading progress in a way that was simple for the teachers, but also creative and rewarding for the students. Some of the drawings that they did were really cute, and they got really excited about being able to show us the drawings when we would come in to give the finishing prizes for the camps every 2 weeks. We also provided incentive books for each student to take home at the start and the end of the program. As I mentioned, for the camps, they were in 2-week programs, and some of the kids ran through all of the camps and some were new. So we initiated a new summer reading program every 2 weeks, essentially. And so some of these kids got to bring home 8 books over the course of the summer. And that was an area, I think I'll talk about this a little bit later, but that was an area where we started to receive feedback through the staff from the parents saying, oh, this is great. You know, our kids are coming home with books. This was also augmented by, we augmented the in-person program by specially designing. John Weaver, our senior program assistant, designed a curriculum of puppet shows and zoo visits that the teachers could tune into throughout the summer. We also made the teachers aware of the 2 story times per week that we do via Zoom. One of those is an outside performer, and one of those is Menlo Park Library staff every week. We also supplied Camp Menlo specifically with a rotating in-classroom library that I'll talk about a little bit later. But the heart of this program, and yes, I have used 2 photographs of myself. This is not self-aggrandizement. This is the fact that there were 2 photographs on my computer that were very handy, and I threw them in. I know that there are excellent photographs of my colleagues as well. However, oh, look at those kids. Look at them. They're cute. Anyway, the heart of this program was the fact that we were offering an early literacy program called Storytime to these classrooms. This was a direct response to Rondell's concerns of low literacy, specifically with the kids at Camp Menlo grades K through 2. He expressed a concern that if we just gave out logs and prize books, these kids weren't going to get engaged because they struggle with reading. And so we thought, okay, well, we can provide story time. We can read with them, essentially. And then we went, oh, let's provide this to all of the K through 2s, and let's provide this to the preschools as well. So story time is intended to be both educational and entertaining, and therefore enriching. It gets the kids to engage with the material. John likes to call it their first book discussion, because it's not just reading the book to the kids, it's talking about the book, talking about the way a book works. Oh, what do you think is going to happen? Let's turn the page to find out. Identifying colors, counting, all of these things come into play when you are interacting with the material and when they're interacting with the material. It creates a great back and forth. And some of the most fun story times were when we just had a conversation together. So they get to engage with their peers and they get to engage with an adult in conversation about something that you're both doing together. There is also this connection between the concept of stories and the act of reading. It makes it not a chore. It opens up this new world. And telling the stories orally while pointing at the words and pictures makes a connection between those concepts. Also, story time isn't just reading books. It's singing and chanting and getting an engagement with the body as well as with the brain, so that they will stay engaged and hopefully have an enjoyable and educational experience. So how did we do this? First off, in terms of, obviously, I clearly have a passion for the literacy aspect of story time. And we wanted to make sure that all of our staff had an understanding of that. The Storytime program specifically was supervised by our senior program assistant, John Weaver, who is an excellent storyteller himself, and also by our librarians. We already had a training program in place because we had started presenting online storytime, which was a new thing during the pandemic. So we had all of our staff take this supercharged storytime course, a 10-hour training course online. And we shifted the purpose of the training to be in-person story time. The communication aspect involved communicating not only with library staff, who were going to be really shifting their focus for the summer to this time-consuming, demanding, and rewarding project, but also getting buy-in from the child care services staff. We needed to make sure that Rondell, Myra, Karen, Kira all understood what we were going to be doing so that they could convey that to their staff so their staff wouldn't be taken by surprise. We also wanted to talk with them about the needs. We wanted this to be an equity-based program and serve the needs as we saw them, or as the staff who were working with these children saw them. So it became evident that the kids at Camp Menlo were more in need of story time. So we provided them with twice as many story times. This was at the request of the folks at Menlo Mania, who said, "Oh, we really don't need that many story times. We're fine." And the folks at Camp Menlo were like, "Yes, come in twice a week, read to the kids." I already mentioned the 3 through 5s largely self-directed, so we ended up serving the K through 2s for story time more and the pre-K. We also provided an in-classroom book collection of 50 books for ages 5 or 6 through 11 or 12. So that's a wide age range to try to cover in only 50 books, but they're currently located at the portables at Annetta Harris. So they didn't have a lot of shelf space. So what we ended up doing was switching out the 50 books every 2 weeks, bringing in new books to make sure that the kids had reading material in classroom. The scheduling aspect, that was largely me, and that's where you can see the horrifying spreadsheet. I wanted to share the sort of messy back end of it a little bit, just to show the sort of level of coordination that we were having to do within staff scheduling and making sure that we were where we needed to be when they needed us to be there. We also made sure that we had the materials, the giveaway books. We also gave away toys at the end, and making sure that those materials were, the correct number of them were with the staff, and the logs were with the staff when they needed to do the story times that they needed to do. And then, of course, there was the execution of the thing, actually going into the classrooms and engaging with the children. So in terms of outcome, I'm going to go through the quantitative aspect first. We had 6 library staff members on this project. There were 8 weeks of active providing of this service, not to mention the time that was involved preparing beforehand. This was 11 story times per week. Approximately 150 children were served, and approximately twice that many books were distributed at the beginning and at the end. And it ended up being about 40 hours of time that we spent in the classrooms. Now, in terms of quality, there's the other picture that I wanted to add. In terms of qualitative response that we had a positive feedback from the childcare staff. And I don't mind saying that some of them seemed a little skeptical at first, but we did receive buy-in from them once they saw what we were doing. The staff also relayed positive feedback from the parents, as I mentioned, especially once the books started coming home. Perhaps the most important of these bullet points, as I see it, is that ultimately we are a community service oriented organization. We want to bring literacy into the community, and this was an action that was taken in service of that, and I feel very good about that. Also, in a way, this was a good way to test out the connection between the library and childcare centers. And as far as I'm concerned, that test had positive results. We are in a strong position to rebuild our on-site story times coming soon. And also conversation is ongoing about continuing to provide literacy services to city-funded childcare programs. And with that, I'm sure I'm over my time. Sorry. However, if there is time for questions, I'm happy to take them. And if there isn't time for questions, I would be happy to be contacted by anyone at any time at this email or this phone number. Thank you very much.
So I see we are open for questions, clarifying questions from the commission. Aldora, I saw your hand waving there. You're
Yes,
off mute now.
thank you. I have watched, before we got into our own stuff here, the Los Gatos storytime things. And I wondered if you have any comment about their approach versus your approach versus what's available.
You know, I will say that I haven't watched the Los Gatos story times. I'm sorry. Can
Well,
you give me
now
a
you
little bit
can
more
do that.
information?
It's good, but it's different. And I figured that if you had seen it sometime or other, you might have some comparison notes. So for another
Sure.
time.
Well, I'd be happy to check into that. I will say I'm working under the assumption that you have watched our online story time in that case.
Pardon?
I am assuming that you are making a comparison between our online story times that we
No, I'm
perform
making a
on
comparison
Wednesdays.
between the presentation today about our story time and my recollection of the Los Gatos approach.
Okay,
Both good, but
I'll
I
check into
just
it.
was curious. You have a finer sieve to work with than I
Okay.
do.
Are there any more questions or comments from the commission?
I'd just like to say, I thought you did a great presentation and it looks like a really wonderful program. I'm sure the kids were excited about it. And I know way back when my kids were little, they loved summer reading with the library. So thank you very much for your valiant efforts.
Well, thank you so much. It's really been a joy actually getting to know the kids a little bit, and they're so smart. They're so great. Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm not sure why you're not a teacher.
I am.
I mean, yes, clearly you are. But you know, just a plug for my profession, which is exhausting and all.
I admire teachers so tremendously.
If I may make it one point.
Sure.
This was a incredible opportunity for us to reach a part of the community that we hadn't reached before. And the feedback we heard reaching that community in Belhaven was only positive, and we are very proud of having done that step that had not been done before ever in Menlo Park. As the Belhaven Library, because of his situation, current situation, was never able to actually reach the community as intensely as we have done through the program that Rose has so masterfully led. So from the diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, this was a great leap for us and an opportunity to continue as we will reaching that community as deeply as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana, for mentioning that.
All right, thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation and for the additional comments. At this time, Sean, do we have any public comment or questions?
Members of the public, would anyone like to make a public comment in regard to this item, D2, Summer Reading Adventure and Collaboration with Childcare Presentation? I see no hands raised. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on to regular business item D4. This is a follow-up from last month's meeting where we were assigning commission members to primary and secondary liaison positions to the 5 affiliate groups that the library has identified as, the Library Commission has identified as being opportunities for collaboration or communication. The selections were made, and Commissioner Lee was not in the meeting last month, and so the one of the questions to be posed right now is we had I guess penciled Commissioner Lee in as the secondary liaison for the Friends of the Library, and wanted to circle back with you, Commissioner Lee, and determine if that was going to be acceptable, that you'd be interested in being the secondary, the backup basically to Commissioner Cohen.
Given that I'm on the board of the Friends of the Library, I think that's an okay thing.
Okay. All right.
David, can I, you know, I am the liaison to the Historical Association, and I just realized that I have a ongoing conflict. I talked to Jim Lewis, but I actually am not able to attend any of their meetings because they're on Tuesday afternoons when I have another commitment. So I can continue to just correspond with them to find out what happened, but I wanted to just bring that to the commission's attention in case there was anyone else who would be able to take a more active role in actually attending some of those meetings.
Thank you for making us aware of that. Are there any other commission?
Well, I was just going to comment that in the past, I have been, not recently, but been affiliated with that group in its development. So I might serve well as a backup or something like that.
So we're actually looking for the primary, because I'm the primary.
Okay. Sorry.
For the no, I'm just thinking. I just want to clarify. I'm not sure you can see the screen, Commissioner Lee. But,
yeah.
I'm listed as the secondary, so an obvious thing would be moved me to primary. But I've got primary for the Parks and Rec Commission, and that's kind of the only primary I'm able to support right now. So, is there?
I was wondering if maybe Dodie might be willing to be the primary for the Historical Association, and then I would be happy to take on the role of secondary in that, David, if that helped you also.
I have had very little affiliation with it because I've been busy with other things like Library Foundation and Friends of the Library. So I would be kind of walking into it cold It can be done, but I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Well, if you, Commissioner Lee, I certainly don't want to put you in a corner at all. So if you don't feel
Well, you did
comfortable-
surprise me.
If you don't feel comfortable, or if you would like to think about it a little bit more and then come back, that would be fine. I'm happy to stay on for now, but I'm actually the primary for 2 of the groups. And so if you wanted to think about it and you thought that was something you could take on, maybe let us know at another meeting.
I'd like to touch base with them and see where their thinking is and what they're doing, and see how good a match it is.
Okay. So what I suggest the following. We don't need to vote on this. Commissioner Lee has agreed to the secondary position for the Friends of the Library currently. Commissioner Hadjovic has indicated that you can't make the regular meetings, but you could follow up. So I guess I agree that we will table this or revisit this again in September to see if there's been a change. And I guess I would ask Commissioner Lee that between now and the September meeting, you give some consideration to whether or not it will work for you to be the primary for the Menlo Park Historical Association, and we can revisit that at that time.
And now what happened in this conversation, excuse me for getting a little lost, what happened to the comment about a library foundation? Did I get lost? I've been through so many meetings on so many of these smaller groups, I may not be in tune with where you are.
Well,
Sorry.
I made a comment about the foundation, but only to say that currently I am the primary informational liaison for the Menlo Park Library Foundation, because I also serve on their board. And so I go to all of those meetings. So I don't know that anyone else mentioned the foundation, other than I was just looking at the list of things people were already doing and thinking, you know, if you wanted to take on one, that would work out great for me.
I think we can table this for now and check in between now and the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission on this topic? And Shauna, is there any public comment for this topic?
Would any member of the public like to make a comment on this item D4, assign commissioners as liaisons to library affiliate groups? Mr. Chair, I see no hands raised. Back to you.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to type a note here. Okay. With that, we're closing out the regular business D section of the agenda and moving on to section E, the informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the Library Commission in the staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the Commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The first item, E1, is the expanding library open hours. And I believe we have a staff report from the staff liaison.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The written report, I believe, covers the topic. We do have the proposed expanded library hours in the report. I can project them on the screen if there are any questions. This is primarily to advise the Library Commission of the current planning and to seek any feedback or comment that you may have about it.
Can you go ahead and put it up on the screen briefly there, Sean, please?
Yes, so is that legible enough for folks who can see the screen share? So this is from the attachment and the report. The top box shows the pre-pandemic hours at the two locations. It says March 1st, 2020 pre-pandemic in the top left there. You can see it was pretty much the same schedule, total hours with some variance between main library and Belhaven, primarily to give the school certain hours of the day to have the library to themselves at the Belhaven branch. Then our current operating schedule greatly reduced as a result of the pandemic and the budget reductions that accompanied that in the economic downturn. However, the City Council in the current fiscal year budget authorized a fairly substantial restoration of operating budget and staffing capacity. However, it will take some time to onboard and train those recently added staff. So we're projecting October 1st or October, the month of October, being the time frame by which we could expand the library operating hours back to a 7-day per week schedule, as shown in the bottom box there. The idea here with these hours is to make them consistent and easy to remember at both locations, 7 days per week, roughly equivalent to what existed before, but with some refinements, as I just mentioned.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, I had one question. Sean, if I understand attendance or report, essentially, Saturday is a very popular day.
Louder, please.
If I understand the attendance, Saturday is a very popular day at the moment, but we're proposing to reduce the hours. I just wanted to check if you looked at any options of trying to maintain a longer period on Saturday. I don't know if that was considered.
It's certainly something we could look at closely. That's good feedback. So thank you for that. And we'll take that under advisement and see what we can do there.
Any other questions from the commission? Sean, do we have any public comment on this topic?
Before I go to that, I will again express my appreciation for Assistant Library Director Jegda's multitasking abilities to take notes and manage the meeting here. But with that, I will ask if there are any members of the public who would like to make a public comment on this item, which is informational item E1, expanding library open hours. And Mr. Chair, I see no hands raised. Back to you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item E2, the library user feedback form, submissions and responses. Turn it over to the staff liaison.
Yes, and the report contains suggestions that we received primarily through the online suggestion box at menlopark.org/feedback. And you can see there in the report the suggestions that were received and then the responses given back. Many of them were requests to order specific books, but there were a few others in there. Happy to answer any questions you may have about any of them.
I was featured.
That's right. We did receive a suggestion from you, Commissioner Lee.
Are there any additional questions or comments from the commission on this topic? Sean, are there any public comments at this time?
If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please indicate so. And Mr. Chair, I see no hands raised. Back to you.
Thank you very much. The next topic is E3, Library and Community Services Strategic Plan Scorecard. Turn it back over to the staff liaison for this topic.
Yes, and many of the commissioners will recall, but for the benefit of our new commissioners, the Library and Community Services Department updated the department's strategic plan over a few months, starting in the fall of last year and culminating with the Library Commission recommending the plan updates in January of this year. The Parks and Recreation Commission also made a similar recommendation to those updates in January. And of course, the commission was involved in the development of the updates over that period from fall of last year until the update in January. At that time, the strategic plan is a living document, so the intent is for it to evolve and change as our needs change over time. So it was determined that we would revisit it in 6 months, just a checkpoint, see how we're doing toward the plan's goals, if any changes are needed. It's only 6 months into a 2-year plan, so a number of the items haven't been achieved yet. However, a pretty appreciable amount have actually already been achieved. So that's the purpose of this item. It's really just to kind of give an update of where we are 6 months in. And happy to, again, answer any questions that the commission may have.
I have perhaps just a technical question. The legend in the presentation, and I know I may have been responsible for the color choices, but it says incomplete is yellow. And I guess I'm just looking through and reading through the topics that there wasn't consistently applied. Just to make the observation, in some places it says incomplete and it's marked yellow, and others say partially achieved, which, not to be a pedant, but would seem to be incomplete, and they're marked as green. So perhaps there's some subtleties there I'm missing, but
that's a good observation, and I will check into it with the staff who put this together. I can't tell if that's a technical glitch. I'm not aware of any particular intent there for the use of the colors. It's sort of in conflict with the legend. I suspect it might be a glitch, but I'll find out and report back.
All right, thank you. It was great to see the update, and I appreciate you guys having provided that update. Other questions or clarifications from the commission? Sean, at this time, is there any comment from the public? Looks like we lost our one public attendee, dropped off the meeting.
So I believe there are no members of the public present, but in the interest of just form, if anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so now. I see no indication there, so back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll close out section E with item E4, the Library Commission tentative agenda calendar. If we could bring that up.
Yes, on screen, you should see the tentative agenda calendar. As the commissioners know, this is just a planning document for mapping out the various topics coming up. I'll just point out a couple of things. One is that related to the MPCC project, it's our understanding that some form of groundbreaking ceremony is planned to take place in the end of October. We don't have a date certain yet, but we will be sure to alert the Library Commission as soon as it is known. We are tentatively on the September meeting agenda would be an opportunity to discuss or give ideas for such an occasion. So that's why it's listed there in September, although again, the event itself is tentatively planned for October. And then the other thing I would mention is that the suspension of the Brown Act provisions that allow for remote meetings to take place as they have been over the past 18 months, those are set to expire on September 30th, unless the governor or legislature extends them. And there isn't any indication that they're planning to extend them. They've already been extended once or twice. So with that, then we can anticipate that most likely the commission would resume meeting in person starting at the October meeting. There's still some options for remoting into meetings, but the Brown Act itself, without these provisions suspended, it's a little complicated as far as posting notices in your remote location and all of that. So with that, planning to return to an in-person meeting starting in October and potentially have the first meeting back be at the Belhaven Branch Library, because at that time, one of the items we likely will be discussing is the Menlo Park Community Campus Project.
Thank you for that. Reviewing the Parks and Rec proposed agenda for the balance of the year, they're showing on October 27 a public engagement of MPCC programming. So I know we had talked about that joint meeting. Would it make sense? And again, we were trying to look for dates that kind of align. Is there merit in trying to have that alignment occur with the Parks and Rec Commission, or really continue to consider doing it in the following month of November? I guess I'm asking the commission, and then also you, Sean, for your opinion.
Well, I can kick it off. So the Parks and Recreation Commission meets next Wednesday, so a week from Wednesday, and I think this very same topic will come up then in respect to like their calendar. I think there's obviously it's the same topic that both commissions are interested in and have a stake in, and some form of joint meeting, whether it's in October or November, makes a lot of sense. So any preference or feedback from this commission can be conveyed to the Parks and Recreation Commission next week. And of course, Chair Earhart is the liaison to that commission.
Yeah, I am planning on attending that meeting. I was going to reach out to the chair in advance. Right now, the PRC is showing us not meeting in November because they're the 4th. The Thanksgiving's the 25th. Their meeting would be the 24th. So again, I guess maybe they are meeting. They don't have anything on their agenda. So as we discussed, we would need to find it.
Right. So that's where November may actually be a good opportunity for a joint meeting, because their regular meeting date is the day before the Thanksgiving holiday. So they would probably be looking to schedule just a different, like the week prior is typically how that works. So that might be a good week to try a joint meeting, but it's all details to be worked out. Okay.
So I guess my proposal is is to reach out to the Parks and Recreation Commission chair and Sean, if you'd like to be involved with that conversation, just please let me know. We can collaborate on that to start the conversation around identifying a joint meeting, because they currently don't have a forecasted joint meeting with the LC. We have a PRC on ours. They don't have an LC on there, so we can certainly determine their interest in it if nothing else. So
yes, on that point though, I can report that although it's not printed on their last agenda calendar, it is a topic that has come up in their discussions. It just hasn't made its way in print on their calendar yet.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any other commission comments about the agenda calendar as proposed? Sean, is there any public comment?
I see no members of the public in attendance. However, if anyone would like to make a public comment, please indicate so now. And I see none, so back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're done with the items from E and moving on to the final section before adjournment. The script says affiliate body member reports, but I guess to be in alignment with the discussion before, the affiliate informational liaison reports, I guess would be the right way to describe that. I'll follow up with Nick to correct that. At this time, are there any reports from commission members from their engagement or interaction with their informational liaison roles?
I do not have a report from the foundation.
As I mentioned, and as Sean did as well, then the next Parks and Rec meeting is on the 25th. I intend to attend that one, so we'll certainly be able to, and we should have some indication as far as the agenda item we just discussed, follow up with for the Library Commission.
And just for the literacy part, since I've connected with that board, a couple of them have attended, I think. They've visited the library in the past couple of weeks just to see the potential space that will be used, and they're eagerly awaiting the arrival of some of the furniture and laptops that will potentially be used. So that just to pass that on. And I'm sure I know that's on my radar.
Okay. I'm having a very difficult time hearing you. I mean, maybe it's just
Me
maybe it's
too.
just me.
Could just be me. I'm just saying, a couple of the literacy partners board members have visited the library space in the past couple of weeks, and they're just awaiting the arrival of the relevant furniture and laptops that they'll be funding.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, if there aren't any more reports from the commission members, at this time, I guess I'm ready to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned at 7:42 p.m. on August 16th. Thank you very much for your participation and great support from Sean. He now has better appreciation for Nick's.
Maybe a promotion. Maybe a promotion is in order. This library stuff
Or
seems to be working out
hazard pay.
for you. Yeah, you may want to think about sort of working it into a career path.
I think I'll do a little more practice, but thank you all for your patience.
Just a thought. Have a good evening.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
David.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.